Welcome back, guys. This is an update on the Jeep progress. I'm going to go to a 5/8 inch rear axle. After our little test drive on the track the other day, things went well, but then the gearboxes melted down. So I'll show you what happened to the gearboxes. A couple of things. So here we go. On one of them, this one here, the first gear basically melted, and then once it melted, it stripped out. And on the second gearbox, it started, the final gear started skipping teeth here. You can see the mesh is just barely hanging on, and that's because this hub that the gear rides on started to melt as well from friction. So probably the gearboxes needed to be re-greased. It's been like a year since I've had them apart, and they were just going around and around and around the track at full throttle the whole time. So it was a lot of time for heat to build up. So part of it, I think, is the pneumatic tires that I have on. I think they're kind of cocking the axle a little bit, the way that the weight's being put on, and I think it's putting potentially a little more stress and friction on this final gear here. So there was two things I wanted to address. One was the wear here, and then also the first gear problem. Now the first gear problem, I just ordered two of the ML Toys steel gears with bearings in it, so that takes care of that problem. I'm waiting for them to come in. I don't have them yet. But I was thinking on this final drive here, I was like, man, could I put a bearing in there? So I went through my boxes of bearings, and I landed on these basically wheel bearings, and I was able to fit one in just like this. And I got a new gearbox over here, and I drilled out the plastic hole for the axle to accept a 5/8 shaft. And right now it's pretty tight. I mean, I can move it up and down a little bit, but it's nice and secure. And I basically used a step drill bit to do that, and just kind of went to the 5/8 mark on one side and then flipped it over and just touched it up on the other side a little bit until I could get the axle to come through. So the idea being is that when this gear here drops in with the bearing, the gearbox is centered to the gear and the bearing, and then the bearing takes the load instead of the plastic of the gearbox. So that's part number one, and then again I'm going to replace the first gear with the metal one. So that's that, and then slide the cover over it. Now, for the pneumatic wheels, the other thing before I get to that is then I also drilled out the wheel adapter as well. So that will this is actually drilled out to 3/4 of an inch. I was going to sleeve it, and I picked up this 3/4 inch ID, or OD, excuse me, 3/4 inch OD 5/8 ID, and it fits in there nicely, but there's too much friction where this slides over the shaft. So I'm thinking I don't even really need it, because the wheel adapter is going to be held in place by the actual tire and the bearings in the tire. And you kind of want it to float around the axle. So honestly, I think that's going to be just fine without having a sleeve in it. Now moving on to the tire. So these are the Harbor Freight pneumatic tires, split rim, and I'm going to be putting the knobby tires on here, but this is just the way they come from Harbor Freight. They have a 5/8 bearing in them. These bearings are junk, and there's a lot of slop in them, so I'll probably upgrade those bearings to something a little better. And then my father-in-law is a woodworker, and he made up these beautiful hubs for me. And these holes here will fit down over the, if you want to call them lug nuts, like this. And so that locks the hub to the wheel, and then the wheel adapter fits down over like that. So everything is locked together. So then this will drop down like that, and then the wheel will drop down onto the hub. Like that. And again, you can kind of see this 5/8 shaft is like just a little under 5/8, which is kind of annoying. So there is a little bit of slop there, and then again, these wheel bearings are kind of junk. But at any rate, that's kind of the plan. And then I also picked up some of these 5/8 locking collars, so they will drop down like that, and then that'll lock everything together. The only other thing I think I might want to do is where this bearing sits down in here. I think I'm going to drop a couple of washers down there, just until I start feeling that it's starting to restrict this, just so that this would be just touching the washers, which would then touch the bearing. Because as of right now, there's a possibility that that bearing could shift and move, and I don't really want that to happen. So just a couple of washers there to keep everything locked in place. So tell me what you guys think. You know, I think it should work pretty well. So anyway, see you on the next one.